Last week, I swallowed something large and sharp while chomping into a plate of freshly cooked spaghetti marinara at a suburban restaurant. I noticed the object at the back of my mouth just as I commenced to swallow, a millisecond too late to abort, abort, abort. As the object disappeared down my gullet, my internal alarm bells started wailing. This was no ordinary fish scale or apple seed swallowing experience. This was excruciating and scary. I checked my breathing. Can breathe. Airway not blocked. Good. And sprinted for the bathroom to attempt damage control. In the restaurant's tiny bathroom, I desperately tried to reach, dislodge, and disgorge the thing that was now jammed in my throat. It felt very sharp, and I guessed it was a piece of mussel shell because the dish I'd been eating had contained whole mussels on the shell. Returning to the table, I poured through the remains of the meal while my friends watched wide-eyed. Yes, there was the mussel shell missing a large triangular piece. I wrapped the mussel shell in a napkin and took it with me to the nearest hospital, where I waved it at the emergency department staff while pointing panic-stricken at my throat. That, I croaked, pointing at the missing part of the mussel shell, is in here. If you've never attended the emergency department waving a broken mussel shell dripping tomato passata, I can't say I recommend the experience. But their response was swift, and I soon had a tiny camera snaking down the back of my nose. No sign of anything with the camera. The object was too deep. X-rays confirmed it was embedded just below the first sphincter of my oesophagus. Who knew we have two sphincters between mouth and stomach? To my horror, the hospital's ear, nose and throat consultant said he couldn't retrieve it from that location and called the surgeon, who put me on the list for emergency surgery the following morning. Surgery with full anaesthesia was needed, an unwelcome surprise. But I wasn't going to argue anything to get that thing out of me, and the sooner the better. As someone who has solo parented toddlers and endured 2 natural births, I can't say the next few hours were the worst of my life, but they came close. I had to spend the night sitting upright to reduce the chance of damaging nerves in my neck while fighting to avoid swallowing, which was excruciatingly painful despite salivating like Niagara Falls. Had the shell punctured my esophagus? We wouldn't know until the surgeon got in to survey the damage. If there was a puncture, I would need to stay in hospital with a feeding tube until it healed, for maybe a week, they said. Gulp. It was a huge relief when they took me for surgery the next morning. I woke up afterwards with an enormous specimen jar next to my bed. Inside was a triangular-shaped piece of mussel shell. Fortunately, the surgeon had been able to remove it without causing further damage. Plus, she hadn't needed to cut into my neck to reach it either. Hooray! And the esophagus wasn't punctured. All in all, a great outcome, and I'm none the worse for my adventure. Corrective actions. The restaurant owner was mortified by the incident, and the cook was apologetic. My friend had examined the rest of my meal after I left. Okay, he ate it and found more shards of shell in the spaghetti sauce. He told the owner what happened and kept him updated about my prognosis. From a food safety perspective, it's hard to categorise this incident. As a consumer, I'm upset I was injured and also embarrassed that I didn't notice the object before I swallowed it. But as a food safety professional, it's difficult to argue massive negligence on the part of the cook. Do you classify a piece of mussel shell as a foreign object in a dish containing whole mussels? Probably not. It's more like getting a seed in a package of pitted dates. And although the piece of shell definitely counts as a physical hazard, food safety hazards being defined as something that would cause illness or injury, I'm not sure that its presence in the dish represents a systematic food safety failure. The cook threw away the rest of the marinara mix and says he will check for broken shells on the whole mussels as he plates up in future. I'm going to attempt to track down the marinara mix supplier and let them know what happened. Takeaways for food professionals. Food safety conversations usually focus on microbial hazards, with physical hazards receiving significantly less attention. When foreign objects are found in food, we often talk about the yuck factor. Think hair in soup or baby rats in chickpeas, and talk less about the injuries they might cause. Until last week, I wasn't aware that surgery was needed if you got something stuck in your throat. I hope this story has broadened your knowledge too and given you something interesting to talk about next time you discuss physical hazards with your food safety team or frontline workers. And if you're eating a dish with mussels, don't forget to chew.